I just returned to Annapolis after 17 years in the Navy. A stack of papers was thrown at me by my sister Samantha, who snarled, "You dishonor the family. Avoid touching this house." She had no idea who the soldier she insulted was or her abilities. My name is Claire Morgan, U.S. Navy Commander 39. Home for the first time in 17 years. The taxi drove away, leaving me on the historic brick street of Annapolis. The saline smell of Chesapeake Bay permeated the crisp late September air, something I had missed on naval bases and warships worldwide. It smelled like steamed blue crabs with Old Bay, salt marshes at low tide, and a childhood I wanted to relive. My clean summer outfit felt like a ghost from another realm. A obstinate hope flared in my heart. This was it. Returnat. I stood in front of my grandfather's two-story red brick colonial, a memory fortress. He always termed it my harbor, a storm-safe port. The harbor was closed today. The black row iron gate, typically open to welcome, was padlocked. New sleek security camera swiveled toward me. Cold, analytical glass eye tracks my every action. It wasn't welcome. A warning. Hope had carried me. Continents began sinking. A severe squall causing a ship to lose its anchor. I tentatively took a step forward, clutching my worn-out duffel bag handle. My glossy black sneakers quiet on old bricks. The only sounds were a faraway gull's call and my heart thudding against my ribs. I expected a warm welcome, but the front door flew open like a bulkhead. My sister Samantha was framed by the door. The woman was. Her navy blue business clothing and tight posture resembled an Apollo's success. No hug or smile. She dropped a hefty manila folder onto the sidewalk with a flick of her wrist. It hit my feet with a dull thump. "This is a restraining order, Claire," she said, cutting glass. "You cannot approach this property within 500 feet. I choked on my breath. I looked at her, then the folder, official-looking papers teasing me from below. "You talking about Samantha?" With a dry whisper I asked. She laughed briefly without humor. "Talking about what? Who do you think you are in that costume? You shame this family." She waved off my uniform and chest ribbons, which symbolized years of dedication. A ship-dwelling 39-year-old spinster who toys with firearms. "Claire, this is Annapolis. The town is for honorable people, relatives, not your transformed self." The words were calculated hits. A well-aimed bullet shattered my frail hope at home. I fell into embarrassment as my chest metals felt like lead weights. I looked behind her for a companion, and then I spotted him. My father, Richard, stood behind Samantha in the hallway shadows. Slimmer than usual, his shoulders slumped. "Dad." Word escapes me, a cry for reason and a glimpse of the fatherly protection I had heard about but never experienced. He briefly looked at me with familiar avoidance. "Listen to your sister, Claire," he muttered, emotionless, before turning away at the distant wall. "Things are changed now. You have no place here." His silence, his inability to protect me, was a worse betrayal than Samantha's hatred. It was the ultimate crushing blow. Police car stopped at the curb. An elderly officer got out, exhausted. He recognized my uniform and rank on my collar and hesitated. "Commander Hardin," he replied, his voice full of professional sorrow that was unsettling. "Not, ma'am. I'm afraid I have to ask you to leave the premises." I was retreating, my immaculate shoes scuffing the pavement. Each stride seemed like retreating from a battle I didn't know I was fighting. Commander Claire Morgan, who had never cried amid enemy fire, felt a hot, searing track down her cheek. Not simply a house anymore. They locked me out of my history and identity. They made me a foreigner and adversary at my own gate. Why, after all my efforts? The cheap motel room's foul air recalled yesterday's query. Why? The word ghosted in the faint light, drawing me back. Time to the rot root. I realized the answer was always there, etched in my childhood silences and sideways glances. I remember the day the large package with the U.S. Naval Academy seal arrived. To me, the letter was my world and validation at 17. I ran into the living room waving it like a prize, my heart racing with pure pride that felt like it would burst. Mom arranged flowers on the mantel. She long sighed, tired sound, and didn't turn. "Oh, Claire," she whispered. "All the other girls are thinking about business school, maybe law, something respectable." My father, Richard, was hiding behind the Capital Gazette in his favorite armchair. He lowered the page enough for me to see his eyes over his reading spectacles, held my stare for a beat, and then raised it. No word, no nod, nothing. His silence confirmed my guilt. Biggest achievement wasn't worth mentioning. He opposed the road and failed to recognize the future. Samantha spoke alone, her voice dripping with beloved child venom. "Oh, look everyone, it's G.I. Jane." She scrolled through her phone on the sofa, cackling. I felt more alone than ever in that room with my family, but my grandfather, a retired Navy man who had served on vessels, noticed me. He found me later on the back porch, overlooking the Chesapeake Bay, where the air smelled of salt and freedom. He put a warm, steady hand on my shoulder and said, "Don't you listen to them, Claire?" With a low, comforting rumble. "The sea is in the hardened blood. Kid, you're my pride and legacy." His words brought life. He gave me a sealed manila envelope the day I departed for the academy. A copy. His eyes were serious as he whispered, "I will. You own this mansion and harbor. I trust you to safeguard it. Soldier's promise." My beacon was that envelope and its promise. The beacon guided me through tedious years at the academy, lonely deployments and risky operations, reminding me of a port to return to. The legendary Admiral McCraven's speech we all had to see came to mind. To change the world, start. Make your bed. I made my bed daily with military precision. I believed I was altering my world. I had no idea my family, the cornerstone of that universe, was rotting. I glimpsed desperate resolution through my anguish the next morning. An explanation, a mistake was needed. I drove downtown to the family lawyer's stuffy office with dark wood paneling and old paper scent. My father's friend Mr. Archer greeted me. He barely concealed his uneasiness. I held my hands in my lap across from his enormous mahogany desk. My voice was steadier than I felt, "Mr. Archer. Original copies of my grandfather's will are needed." After clearing his throat, he pushed his spectacles up his nose. He avoided my eyes by shuffling papers. "Ah yes, the Hardin estate," he said too formally. "Well, Commander, that will was updated about 5 years ago." He retrieved a folder document. "The latest legally valid will gave the estate, including the Chesapeake Avenue residence, to your sister, Mrs. Megan Caldwell." Room slanted. Air surged from my lungs. "But that's impossible. Grandfather promised me a copy." He interjected with a harsh voice. "A copy is not the final document. Will was fully executed and notarized. Richard Morgan, your father, testified." "A witness?" "My father saw my grandfather shredding. Promise." He watched as they eliminated me and destroyed my one safe harbor. My father, the soldier's son, breached his pledge. I sat paralyzed in the stiff leather chair, hearing the lawyer's words. My one pure, unbreakable belief, which I had maintained for 17 years, had been destroyed. Have you ever trusted a promise just to find out the person you loved most was the one? Willingly betray? After leaving the lawyer's office, I felt disconnected from my past. The previous night's query resurfaced sharper. How valuable was my 17 years of service if my grandfather's pledge was worthless? I had to look back at the lady their apathy had created to answer that. Every departure and deployment in my adult life was a whispered pledge to myself that the sacrifice would be worth it, meaningful. I recalled my first Christmas in the Persian Gulf, with its sand-filled air and impending violence. Whilst my family was in Annapolis eating roast turkey and pumpkin pie, I was listening to the ship's engine and drinking Messal coffee. Samantha texted a photo of them all smiling in front of a crackling fireplace in Mom's hideous Christmas sweaters. They perfectly portrayed family life in America. My gift to them, a hand-carved wooden box I spent hours bargaining for in a dusty Bahraini bazaar, was gone. My sole light in my dark cabin was my laptop screen, where I saw their happy faces. I felt a profound, bottomless loneliness that the huge ocean outside couldn't match. After weeks, my mother replied to my holiday email with a few sentences. "Are you well? When will you weary of this and return home permanently?" Samantha's kids miss Aunt. They never questioned about the threat or the long watches for cyber attacks. They never inquired about my new or old friends. My career didn't serve them. A peculiar, inconvenient hobby kept me from family photographs for a long time. It had to be endured till I came to my senses. Years blurred, distinguished by my deployment locations, not seasons. Missing my niece's baptism, cousin's wedding, aunt's funeral. My gifts from unpronounceable ports were a Japanese silk scarf and an Italian leather-bound diary. They were modest, desperate attempts to weave me back into the family tapestry to tell them I existed. A brief, courteous thank you text or, more often, silence followed each present. Silence hurt most. I filled the chilly, empty hole with work obligation and the steadfast logic of the mission. I recalled becoming commander. It was a huge accomplishment after years of restless nights at Fort Me fighting digital adversaries. It was a respected rank that symbolized my life's work. The new shiny rank insignia weighed me down as I drove back to my modest, vacant apartment on the base. I stared at my reflection in the black TV screen in my Spartan living room alone. There was pride, a fiery pride, but it was a private achievement. I called home hoping, but I should have known better. Dear parents, I made commander. The other end of the line paused, sounding accusatory. My mother's voice shifted like if I'd interrupted something more essential. That sweet, sweetheart. Did we tell you Samantha got a Lexus? A lovely one, white pearl. She drove us to the city pier. My new 17 years of hard work was dismissed in favor of a new luxury car. My promotion, which showed my perseverance and talent, was a footnote in my sister's wealth narrative. So much coldness and nonchalant rejection should have broken me. I should have plummeted. It didn't. It hardened me. My discipline was molded by it. Pierre's pleasant family calls and weekend visits couldn't compare. I excelled in Fleet Cyber Command because I had nothing else. No interruptions, long calls, or romantic trips. It was my mission. Cryptographic keys, threat assessments, and coding made up for my family's absence. Their absence armored me. Despite them, I grew strong. I based my life, career, and reputation on it, the root of their carelessness. But standing symbolically on the cold concrete outside my boyhood home, the armor felt flimsy and breakable. The strength I had built alone was being challenged in unexpected ways. This strength was for foreign threats, digital ghosts in the machine. Was such strength adequate to fight a battle against a real nation? However, my blood disciplined me to protect a nation and my life, eigenem herzen, from its earliest defenders. Nobody told me. For the first time in ages, I didn't know. The question from the night before felt heavy as I sat alone in the rental automobile peering out at the bleak, choppy Chesapeake Bay. Was my strength enough? A harrowing no. My battle-tested officer talents weren't for this fight. Analysis, strategy, and emotional detachment failed. Dark venom of family treachery. I felt out of my depth for the first time. Unmanned ship. Storm drift I couldn't navigate. I picked up my phone with trembling hands, my thumb lingering over a number I knew by heart and hadn't phoned in months. I pressed. Me, Claire. My usually steady voice broke on the last word. After a lull, the other end exploded with concern. My gosh, Claire, where are you? What's wrong? You sound dreadful. My best buddy from college at Maryland, Rachel Hayes, is a prominent Baltimore litigator. A blast of intense patriotism rang in her voice. I summarized the horrible story in a few terms. Gate restraining order will. Jessica was feared in court because she listened uninterrupted. After I finished, the queue quieted. Her voice returned. Not worried anymore, but chilled. Steele. In an hour, meet me at Candler's. Nobody else in your family should know. Avoid their calls and call Nick Lawson. Tell him to meet us now. Not a proposal. It was a protective command. I had not heard anything so reassuring in 17 years. For the first time since leaving that taxi, I felt something other than anguish. Like having a first mate. Like I remembered, Candler's Riverside Inn was boisterous, unsophisticated, and deliciously steamed crab and melting butter scented. Families cracked shells with wooden mallets on the wooden deck, laughing over the water. My life was a million miles from this cheerful regular scene. However, our corner table was a battle room. Jessica's leather briefcase included a yellow legal pad with notes. My former Navy colleague Nick Lawson was drinking beer. His face was as rough as a ship's hull, but his eyes saw everything. He was the best investigator I knew after leaving the NCIS to become a private security consultant. There was no need to repeat the tale. I moved my grandfather's will across the paper-covered table. Jessica read with her manicured nails on the paper's edge. She frowned. Signature of notary. Feels off. I'll verify his license. Leo barely glanced. His voice was low and he leaned forward. On my way, Claire, I made a preliminary search. No major medical files for your father. No scheduled heart procedures, but Nathan, your brother-in-law, leverages Vanguard Logistics to the max. His debt drowns him. He stared me in the eye. The issue goes beyond a house. I wasn't asked how I felt. They didn't pity me. They asked what we'd do next. I wasn't helpless. I had the training and resolve to respond, required her tactical team. The atmosphere changed instantly. Jessica opened her laptop and typed efficiently with practice. This is our first plan. First, I'm requesting an urgent injunction to halt any property transactions. They can't sell it. It's not leasable. Can't even reorganize. A wall was built around it immediately. She stopped staring at me. Step 2. I'm petitioning to invalidate this new will for fraud and undue influence. Will request signature forensics. It was a grim smile. Claire, they assume you're a lone soldier. They're wrong. Now you have air support. Leo steadily held my shoulder, soothing me. You have ground intel, he said. I'll study Nathan and Vanguard Logistics, finances, contracts, and shell corporations. There are no perfect secrets, only clumsy cover-ups. The loose thread will be found. For the first time in days, I breathed. Defiant hope replaced the crushing weight of loneliness. My harbor wasn't that Bayside brick mansion. It was this table. These people, my chosen family, were ready to sail into the worst storm with me without hesitation. The war had begun, and I wasn't alone. Meeting Jessica and Leo was thrilling. Pure optimisme. I stopped reacting for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Was planning. I had team. Plan existed. A frail sensation of control replaced the raw, gaping wound of betrayal. I should have known my family wouldn't be passive. Years of hidden self-worth attrition had been waged against me. After I stated my determination to fight back, they just switched from cold disdain to passionate warfare. The attack was cloaked in guilt and faked affection. My father called a few days after Jessica filed the injunction. His name on the caller ID made my stomach clench into a frigid knot. His voice was different when I answered, not flat and contemptuous. It was weak and hoarse, purposely feeble. Stage actor-worthy performance. Dad, honey, Claire. Honey, Dad hadn't called me that since I learned to ride a bike. I sense your rage. You're entitled, but listen. Doctors claim my heart is unhealthy. They must operate shortly. The speech was punctuated by shallow theatrical coughs that sounded uncomfortably repetitive. Claire, we need house money. Your old man can't die over a bit of property, please. You left 17 years ago. Does that house represent anything anymore? Just be a nice daughter, Claire. Consider your family. He made me the villain in his medical drama. The cold, uncaring daughter who would let her father die for bricks and masonry. He was using family as a bludgeon to degrade me. Cold rage filled me. I remembered something from a knee-brown discussion online during a lonely time. Deployment. Being brave enough to set limits means loving ourselves even when we disappoint others. Family disappointed me my whole life. I needed to stop disappointing myself. I whispered, I'll have my lawyer look into it, Dad. And hung up. My quiet was a new barrier he wasn't ready for. Their next move was a sentimental ambush. A few days later, I waited in my rented car outside Jessica's workplace. A familiar Lexus SUV arrived in Baltimore while examining case notes. Mother escaped. I saw her older face, carved with worry, and knew it wasn't for me. I reluctantly rolled down my window when she tapped. Claire, we need to talk, she murmured red-eyed. She held a tin package of her homemade oatmeal raisin cookies, my childhood favorite. I was quickly transported to a simpler, more innocent time by the smell. The gesture was clear, insulting. I know things are tense between you and Samantha, she said, begging. But Nathan is a good son-in-law. He's done so much for us, for your father. His business is just going through a rough patch. We're a family, Claire. We're supposed to help each other. She grabbed my hand through the window, her skin cold and her grip strong. I gently pushed the tin box back towards her. I can't do that, Mom, I said, my voice barely audible. I could see the flicker of calculation in her eyes before the tears started to well up again. That night, Nathan's email subject line read, a friendly piece of advice. His tone was slick and condescending, like a smug, unsolicited pat on the head. Claire, it began. I know you're upset, but let's be pragmatic. I know you work for Fleet Cyber Command. It wasn't advice. It was blackmail. He was holding my career, my honor, the core of my identity hostage. He was threatening to destroy the one thing I had built, could never touch. The simmering anger I had been suppressing for days finally boiled over. This wasn't about a house anymore. This wasn't even about a broken promise. They had crossed a line. They had targeted my service, my uniform, my oath. And in doing so, they crossed a line that would have lasting consequences. He issued a veiled threat, implying my career could be destroyed. A textbook case of blackmail. It wasn't just a threat against me, Claire Morgan, the forgotten daughter. It was a direct assault on Commander Hardin, United States Navy. It threatened the uniform I wore with pride, the oath I took with solemn sincerity, and the 17 years of my life I had poured into serving my country, loyalty my very foundation, as a weapon against me. He was holding my honor hostage. And in that moment, something inside me, something I had kept locked down for decades, shattered. It wasn't a loud, dramatic break, but a quiet, definitive fracture. Like a ship's hull's hairline crack that suddenly gives way under immense pressure. All the slights, dismissals, Christmases alone, promotions met with indifference, and years of being made to feel small and insignificant coalesced into one unbearable fury. Grandfather's house. They had spat on his memory, and now they were trying to strip me of the one thing that was entirely my own. The time for silent endurance had passed. This was no longer a fight over a house or an inheritance. Justice. This was a fight for my soul. I walked to the cheap particle board desk where I had placed a small American flag in a plastic stand, a habit from years of living in transient quarters around the world. I looked at the 50 white stars on their blue field and the 13 red and white stripes and remembered my commissioning oath, which I had spoken with a trembling, earnest voice. I entered the bathroom. I had always imagined those enemies as foreign powers, faceless threats on a computer screen. I never imagined they would share my last name, sit at the same Thanksgiving table I was never invited to, but a threat to the integrity of a commissioned officer, a threat to blackmail them over their service. Braced on the sink, I looked past the tired lines around my eyes and the exhaustion of the past few weeks to see a commander in the United States Navy. I saw the discipline etched into my posture, and the resolve forged in the crucible of countless challenges. I leaned in close, my breath fogging the glass, and met my own gaze. Command to myself. You have faced down some of the world's most sophisticated state-sponsored hackers and operated in war zones where a single mistake meant death. You will not be broken by these self-serving manipulators, even if they are your own blood. I took a deep breath, feeling the cold resolve spread through my limbs and sharpening my thoughts. I walked back to the bed, picked up my phone, and moved with swift, deliberate purpose. No more hesitation. No more second-guessing. First I called Leo. Leo, it's Claire. The mission has changed. We are now in a full-spectrum dominance phase. I want everything you can find on Nathan Caldwell and Vanguard Logistics. Next I called Jessica. Jess, I said, my voice crisp and commanding. Get ready. We're going on the offensive. This is no longer about property. It's about accountability and truth. We'll bring them into the light. As its commanding officer, I would not fail. Operation Justice was a go. And the days that followed were a blur of caffeine and encrypted data. The cheap motel room with its lingering smell of disinfectant and regret became my personal command center. My military-grade encrypted laptop became my weapon system. Park, a young brilliant hacker Leo had brought onto our team. She went by the call sign Kestrel and moved across her keyboard with the fluid grace of a concert pianist composing a symphony of digital infiltration. I compiled a detailed investigation board tracking evidence. Was no longer the discarded daughter. I was an intelligence officer on the most personal mission of my life. Every click of the mouse, every command line I executed was a deliberate step closer to the truth. A brick in the wall of justice I was building against them. The first breakthrough came from Kestrel late one night when the world was asleep. Amateurs always forget about metadata. The digital fingerprint left on every file. I leaned closer to my screen, tracing the lines of code she was highlighting. Based on the hidden XF data embedded in the image file, I traced its source IP address. She paused for dramatic effect, letting the moment hang in the air. Herself. She was so arrogant, so insulated by her perceived local status, and so sure I would never fight back that she used her own office equipment to commit a felony. At the same time, Leo sent an encrypted file with the subject line "Pay Dirt" and a meticulously detailed spreadsheet. "This is Vanguard's money trail," he said over our secure line, his voice low, from his business account into a Delaware shell firm. A classic ownership concealment technique. A few days later, Samantha's savings account received the same amounts minus a tiny processing fee as consulting or real estate commissions. "Claire, these people launder money." Classic brazen scam. They probably thought no one would look and their family name would shield them. They misjudged me. They saw one, a grieving, isolated woman, not an analyst who had spent her career finding needles in digital haystacks. Their resentment clouded their judgment. My own field provided the ultimate incriminating evidence. It took this from family drama to seriousness, something that threatened my establishment. Black coffee and purpose drove him late the third night. I plunged into public access federal contract databases. I recognized myself in the place, found what I wanted. Nathan's company, Triton Marine Solutions, has received a significant Navy surveillance drone electrical component contract. The deal required security and technological certification that a small, struggling company like his couldn't provide. Reading the proposal docs made my heart race, pound a terrible rhythm. They listed many sophisticated cybersecurity certifications in their application to demonstrate their skills. Only a few cleared workers, including me, could see their unclassified descriptions and application standards due to their intensive certifications. He stole my professional identity. He utilized my name, reputation, and service to justify his deception. My thinking was sharp despite my shaking hands. I ran. He received serial numbers of components included in his contract from a restricted cross-reference database I had from Fleet Cyber. Direct, undisputed match. The numbers matched a batch of components lost in transit during an audit while I was deployed in the Persian Gulf 3 years earlier. They weren't lost. My brother-in-law's company was selling them back to the Navy, perhaps at a discount, after they were stolen and diverted. Exorbitant price. This was no longer scam. A scheme to deceive the U.S. government could compromise national security. I quickly created a secure time-stamped report and forwarded it to Jessica. Her legal rage made her voice chilly as she contacted me within minutes. "This is beyond my expectations, Claire. Forgeries, wire fraud, money laundering, now this. This is organized crime." She breathed deeply. "Not just a lawsuit over. Claire, a RICO case, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, may be in play to dismantle criminal businesses. And now it targeted my family." The courtroom was chilly and impersonal, with polished wood and muted colors to remove emotion. Sitting next Jessica, I had my back straight and my hands in my lap. My family and lawyer sat across the aisle. A picture of selected victimhood. Samantha wore an elegant cream-colored suit and looked exhausted, like a responsible businesswoman dealing with a family issue. My father, Richard, looked weak and depressed, leaning on my brother-in-law Nathan. Nathan whispered to their attorney, smugly nodding his costly tie. They assumed they controlled the stage and narrative. They would realize the battleground had shifted. Their lawyer, the silver-haired man with an unduly confident smile, started. He presented a devastating, masterful image for the judge. He described an Annapolis institution as a loving, close-knit family. Samantha, a hard-working sister, stayed home to care for their elderly parents. A sick parent was his topic and he talked with sympathy. Then he looked at me. He depicted me as a damaged, estranged daughter whose military service had left her psychologically weak, out of touch. He even submitted copies of my emotional emails to my mother throughout the years, turning my grief and loneliness into evidence of my instability. To finish, Samantha on cue dabbed her eyes with a tissue. "I always wanted what was best for our family," she muttered to the judge. Their lies filled the room. I sensed the judge's careful pity. Then Jessica's turn. Her steady, deliberate rise seemed tranquil. She had no cash. They weren't needed. "Your Honor," she said calmly. A big screen displayed, "We are not here today to discuss feelings. We are here to discuss facts." The first image was a high-resolution scan of the deed transfer falsified signature. Jessica presented Exhibit A. A signature purported to be my client's. The second photograph appeared next. Kestrel's digital information screenshot. Exhibit B is the digital fingerprint of Exhibit A's scan. showing it was made on a specific machine at a given moment on a Caldwell real estate agency network on Main Street. Tightened. Samantha's flawlessly composed face gave way. Jessica kept going. Now follow the money. The screen showed a complicated flowchart of funds from Nathan's Vanguard Logistics to a Shell Corporation in Delaware, and then Samantha's savings account. Exhibit C. The prosecution's purported money laundering pattern. Samantha took a sharp inhale. She was breathing rapidly and her chest was rising and falling. Finally, Your Honor, the will. On the witness stand, Jessica placed a folder. An affidavit from a forensic document examiner confirms that the updated will signature is fake. We have this. She held up one sheet of paper. A certified copy of the original will notarized by a man who later said the family urged him to stay quiet about the phony document. Their lawyer came up, shouting hearsay and relevance criticism. It was too late. Broken narrative. Their story was crumbling. The court wants to hear from Commander Hardin, the judge sternly remarked. I headed to the stand. I ignored my relatives. I didn't need their astonishment or contempt. That was my lifelong feeling. My attention was fixed. I raised my right hand, swore, and sat. The garment felt more like armor than a costume. I stared at the judge. Your Honor, I said, my voice calm, every syllable a command training product. This issue involves more than a house or false papers. This case affects national security. A courtroom mumble. I explained clearly, concisely, and unemotionally how my professional credentials, security clearances, and cybersecurity expertise had been stolen and exploited to fraudulently secure a key defense contract. I explained how Triton Marine Solutions, a no-qualification business, won a Navy surveillance drone component deal. These weren't ordinary parts. Honor. I said my investigation cross-referencing declassified procurement data with restricted serial number logs confirms that these components match a batch reported a lost in transit during a logistical audit while I was serving in the Persian Gulf. I took it in. Our monitoring and reconnaissance capabilities were compromised because stolen U.S. Navy property was sold back to the Navy. These parts may have been altered. They might have been duplicated. They could have gone to our enemies. Rear courtroom doors opened as I spoke. Two serious-looking dark-suited people entered and stood silently near the wall. Badges weren't required. I recognized them quickly. They were from the DoD Inspector General. I glanced at my family. Transformation was complete. Samantha's face was pure terror. My father had hid his face in his hands in his chair. Nathan was ghost white. His arrogant assurance was vanished, replaced by the primitive panic of a cornered man with no escape. Now he understood. They all did. This was no longer a family fight. The game ended. The preliminary hearing was followed by brutality. Instead of a grand crash, my dominoes fell with a horrible silent finality. Collapsed structure. It burst in local media. Major Annapolis businesses investigated for defense contract fraud. Property broker accused of forgery and money laundering. The Capital Gazette's internet headlines were cruel. Nathan and Samantha's names, once local successes, now evoked controversy. From the comfort of my motel room, I watched it. I got updates from Leo. Vanguard Logistics declared bankruptcy. Triton Marine, federal agents investigated solutions. All their bank accounts, equities, and retirement monies were blocked. Samantha was pleased of their huge waterfront home, which the bank lent on. Friends who used to attend their expensive parties crossed the street to avoid them. Their dominion was built on lies, and my pain was fading. I felt no joy or victory, only emptiness. A lengthy, hard war ended in silence. The silence is louder than the explosions. Though the conflict was done, the cost was still being calculated. The phone calls were their arrogant death knell. Samantha started it. Because of morbid curiosity, I answered when her number displayed on my screen. A primal hysterical shriek replaced the crisp, patronizing voice. Claire, what have you done? She yelled, sobbing. You ruined us and everything, going to steal our house. What do I tell my kids? Blame poured in. She never addressed the theft, forgeries, or fraud. What they did wasn't the crime in her eyes. I was guilty of exposing them. You happy now? She cried. You won. You wrecked your family. My heart raced slowly as I listened to her tirade. Old Claire would have felt guilt and obligation, but answering woman was different. I didn't destroy it, Samantha, I responded coolly. It was internally rotting. Just turned on the lights. Another wave of unintelligible screaming followed the startled silence. I didn't wait to hear. I ended the call and blocked her number with a strange sense of finality. Our chat ended. Some days later, the ultimate confrontation occurred on the courthouse's frigid stone steps. My father was waiting for me as I left a meeting with Jessica. His shoulders were bent, his costly coat was loosely hanging on his tiny frame, and the confident patriarch was gone, replaced by a delicate, shattered old man. "Claire," he whispered. He avoided my gaze. "I'm sorry." His words seemed strange. "Samantha persuaded me. She stated you didn't need the house because you had everything." Think he faltered. "Might have been jealous. Your independence and strength make me jealous." I felt little. I was cowardly. I watched my father cry for the first time. Instead of my mother's controlled tears, they were messy remorse tears. My inner child, who had always needed his praise, longed to console him. But I couldn't. The apology was for his sentiments, not his deeds. Not my anguish but his disgrace. "Dad, I can forgive your weakness." My voice was quieter and filled with genuine sadness. "I can't forgive you for signing that paper, betraying Grandpa's promise, and watching them throw me out." He looked up, his eyes pleading. "We can still be a family." I shook my head slowly. "No, we can't." I looked at him and saw a stranger. "Good luck, Dad." Away. My footsteps echoing on the stone. I did not look back. I left him there, standing alone among the pieces of the life he had helped shatter. It was the hardest thing I had ever done and the most necessary. It was the definitive act of choosing myself, of drawing a final unbreakable boundary. The harbor was closed for good, and I was finally free. Nathan, my brother-in-law, received 8 years in a federal prison for conspiracy to defraud the United States and money laundering. Samantha, my sister, received 6 years for her role in the fraud and forgery. My father, Richard, for his role as a witness and facilitator, received. Judge's gavel came down with a sharp, definitive crack. It was done. I felt no surge of triumph, no satisfying rush of vengeance. The victory was hollow, the courtroom air thick with the ghosts of what could have been. I only felt a profound sense of quiet. A heavy chapter of my life had finally closed, precious than any acclamation. I remembered a Maya Angelou quote that stuck with me. "I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it." I had been changed irrevocably, but I was whole. A few weeks later, the court returned the Annapolis house to me. With the legal papers, I drove there one last time and parked across the street to look at it. The white trim was bright. The gate that had once been locked against me was open. I could walk right in, reclaim my room, sleep in my old bed, and stare out at the bay from the porch where my grandfather had made his promise. But as I sat there, I realized with startling clarity that I didn't want to. That house was no longer a harbor. It was a museum of pain, haunted by the ghosts of a family I no longer had to escape. I called Jessica and told her it's done, but I'm not moving in. I explained my plan, which had been forming in my mind for days. I would sell the house and use every penny to establish the Hardin Harbor Scholarship Fund, which would support female midshipmen at the U.S. Naval Academy from difficult family backgrounds, who were also looking for a harbor. My grandfather's legacy would be in the future of the women who, like me, had answered the call to serve. I could give them the opportunities my family had denied me. 1 year later, on a perfect cloudless autumn morning, I stood on the Naval Academy grounds. The inaugural Hardin Harbor Scholarship recipient, a first-year midshipman with bright, determined eyes, stood beside me. "I don't know how to thank you, Commander," she said, her voice filled with raw, real gratitude. "This scholarship, it changed everything for me. My family didn't like my choice to come here." I smiled a genuine, easy smile and pointed out toward the Chesapeake Bay, where the morning sun was glinting off the water, turning it into a diamond sheet. "The real harbor isn't the place you come from," I told her. "Choose where to build. The purpose you chose, the people who stand with you is most important." I hesitated, covering my heart. One tear fell, traced a path down my cheek, but it was not a tear of sorrow. It was a tear of gratitude, peace, and profound and quiet completion. I had lost a house, but I had found my home. I had lost a family, but I had created a legacy. I had finally found my harbor. My name is Claire Morgan, and this was my story. If my story touched you, please share it with someone who may need to hear they are not alone. Like this video and tell us in the comments below, who is your chosen family? Who is your harbor of strength? Your stories matter.